Hello, welcome back to A Journey to a Mile. Today I am super excited. We're going to go through the process of installing our Nightforce ATACR Riflescope onto our Masterpiece Arms 6.5 Creedmoor rifle. So this will be kind of a walkthrough of the process that I follow. I'll include some of the tools. Let's go through those now. We have just a digital level here that we'll leverage as a means to kind of verify. We do have, this is the Fix-It Sticks all-in-one torque driver. So, they have the individual components as well. I happen to just have this all-in-one handy, so we're going to use that today. This here is a Wheeler scope leveling kit. We'll go through the process of using that as well. I have a couple of machinist blocks just to help us making sure that everything is level. I'll show you how we're going to use those in a little bit. And then also excited today to get this opened up. So just recently got this in. This is the MDT Send It Level. So this is also a digital indicated level. We'll use that during the installation process, although I have not had a chance to verify that it's all calibrated yet. So I'm going to trust some of the other equipment that I have that I know is true. But we'll get that installed as well and see how that works. So first thing first, we do want to make sure that our firearm is unloaded. We do not want any possibility and want to make sure everything is safe here. So as you can see, I have my chamber flag in, but I will do a physical check of the chamber as well, and we are good to go. Okay, part of my first process that I follow is I like to make sure that I understand how level my surface is, because the first piece that I need to validate is where I can measure the levelness on the scope itself. So the first thing I like to do is go ahead and get a feel. So I have my Wheeler level out. Just so everyone's aware, I've already somewhat leveled this workbench. It's a moving or mobile workbench, so it's never going to be completely perfect. And so I like to just get a feel for how it's measuring, so that as I measure out the scope and the rest of the activity, I'll be able to make sure that everything is consistent. So if I'm off just a slight amount, as long as I'm off that exact same amount as I'm checking, then I can get a good feel for whether or not my scope surfaces are level in the process. So first step I'm going to do, I go ahead and I can see my level here, and it's looking pretty decent. Obviously, like I mentioned, this is just measuring the workbench right now. I'm also going to go ahead and turn on my digital meter here as well, and you can see kind of goes back and forth a little. These are true just to depending on which one you're using. There's a certain tolerance on it, but as you can see on this particular direction, at least, I'm relatively level. You'll notice I have this machinist block here. Because of the objective lens being so much larger, this is not perfectly balanced, and the flat surface on the bottom of the scope body is not going to be able to rest on a table. So I need to be able to elevate that up in order to see. So I like to just confirm that everything I'm using here is the same. So you can see I'm getting the same measurement on this block as I had on the table itself. So little slight fluctuations here and there, but relatively speaking, that is the same reading that I had. You'll see that same little bit of fluctuation there on the table as well. So my next process is, ideally, I'd like to be able to use the top of the turret for leveling this, but some of the turrets aren't always going to be exact. This is on threads as it turns, right? And so there's no cap on this particular one, and this is not a locking turret, so it doesn't move. And so hopefully this surface will be relatively level to the scope body itself. On the bottom of the scope, there is a flat edge. So this flat edge here is ultimately what I'm trying to measure to. As long as the scope is manufactured to a high standard, this flat edge should be level to the reticles that are inside. My process will go through and verify that. So not only checking the levelness using our physical levels, Also checking the optics and the level of the reticle, as well as, most importantly, ultimately a field test, and make sure that this is tracking true in all of the different axes. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put this on top of my turret and try to get that nice and level. All right, so you can see here how the turret is definitely a little different than what my base is. And so a trick here is just to go ahead and rotate that turret a few clicks so that I can get that consistent with my 0.05 to 0.1. So we'll just rotate this up a little bit and see where we're at. That position back on. All right, let's drive it a little bit more. And this, you can go in small increments. Find what's going to work for you. Once you get it down, you can fine tune that quite a bit. Obviously, any little turning on that, so you can see we're getting a lot closer to where we need to be. All right, so maybe just a little too far, simply because if you remember, my level is at that 0.05 to 0.1. So I may want to try one click back on this. And let's see. There we go. Let's try one more. Okay, that's probably pretty good. Okay, now that we have verified our surfaces on our scope body, the next step is to go ahead and determine exactly where I'm going to place my mount, and ultimately we'll set my eye relief. I'll do another video on my process of setting the eye relief so you can see that, and so I'll link to that as we progress. Normally, I prefer to do this in a vise, but just so it's a little easier for you to see this process, I'm going to go ahead and level it out on this bipod and this bag. So we're going to get this rail in alignment, and then I'm going to go through and verify kind of the rest of the chassis. It's not always going to be exactly a match between the chassis and your action and so forth. Hopefully it's as close as you can possibly get. But in this particular case, I'm more concerned about this rail in alignment with my action, which then is aligned with the barrel. And so this is going to be what I'm going to base my rifle level off of. And then I'll show you using the Wheeler kit how you can maintain that even after I put the scope back onto the rifle, so I can make sure that it stays level through the entire process. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is go ahead and get this level, and I'll move the camera here in a second so you can see. I'll go ahead and start this with just a bubble level on this rail, and I like to test it in a couple different spots within the rail. Now this particular bipod, this is that Accu-tac FC4. This allows us to pan, so I can take this and make these adjustments pretty easily with this particular bipod. Get that lined up. Oops, over it. Okay, and we'll cinch that down, make sure it doesn't change much as we're moving it, as we're tightening it down. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And I'll bring over the camera so you guys can see this as well. And I'm going to go ahead and test this out with my digital level as well. And we'll just kind of see where that's at. Okay, so hopefully you can get a good view here, this is very level. Now, unlike before when we were leveling out the top of the turret to the table itself, I no longer want to account for any variance. I want this rifle to be as perfectly level as I possibly can. So this really gives me a good base that I should leverage here. Okay, so since we've confirmed this level, actually I'm going to leave this on here for just a little longer. Make sure that this is maintaining that level position. I'm going to use the other part of this wheeler kit. This is designed to mount onto the barrel itself. This way, as I am doing the rest of the installation, I can ensure that this always stays level. So if I get this on, this will feed over barrel, and I can tighten this down. Now the nice thing with this kit is it has its self-adjustment knob, so I like to get it relatively close, tighten it down, and then you can make very minor adjustments using the knob here to make sure that we have this perfectly level on. And let's make sure nothing moved here. We're still at 0, still level on the bubble as well. So this should allow me to make sure that nothing has moved through the process of doing the installation itself. So now we can take these off. I'll shut this off. Put it to the side. And we're going to get this mounted again. So like I mentioned earlier, I like a little bit of oil that's on here. So just applied a small amount, wipe that down pretty clean. I will get this mounted on here. And we want to push this up against the lugs and the forward motion. So as this will help maintain the position even through a recoil. So the recoil is going to be applying pressure directly to the lugs, not allowing the rifle to slip back and having the inertia cause the scope to slide forward whatsoever. So by maintaining pressure to the front as this is put into place, then that will allow this that best control. Now these will be torqued down. Each of the different mounts has their own specific torque settings. Make sure you read through your manual, check with the manufacturer on what their recommendations are for the torque setting itself. I like to go ahead and torque this base in place, although these caps on the tops for my rings have not been torqued down yet. Those are still just very lightly hand tightened through the process I use to follow on the eye relief. So we'll get this torqued down. And I like to do a double check. And one more. Okay, so that is torqued in place. Now the next step is to get this scope perfectly level. So let's just double check. This looks good. I'm still level here. Still looking good. I also do have a bubble level in my chassis that hasn't moved from what I positioned it at initially. So my next step is to go ahead and level off. As you recall, I validated. I have not moved this turret from the position when I did my leveling earlier and confirmed the parallel path between the bottom plate and the top of the turret. So I'm going to go ahead and get my digital level again here and get this applied. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to verify this across multiple different levels through this entire process. So on here, slightly turning, being careful not to, went the wrong way. Being careful not to adjust side to side. I'm just turning this in here for that process. I want to make sure that I'm staying level. And I might have these just a little tighter than I want. I want this to move fairly freely. Went a little too far. Okay, so I have that set to 0. Now as I go to finish torquing down these particular ring tops, I do want to keep an eye on my spacing. I want this to be even on both the top or front and the back so that that can be maintained and give a good constant lock. And again, consistency is going to be key on this. So I'll maintain that. Don't necessarily need to measure that. I don't have anything mounted on this, but I want that to be very visually close. There's ways you can use different shims or other things to help measure that if you really want to be. Make sure that's exact, but you might drive yourself a little crazy trying to adjust that. So now that this is in place and it's level, again, I do not want to torque this whatsoever, but I'm going to give this a quick view, and let's get in close here and take a look at how our gaps are looking and if they're relatively even or if we need to adjust those out at all. Okay, so again, I'm going to keep all of my levels in place as I'm going through this. Be careful not to knock this over whatsoever. My gaps are relatively close. I could probably spend a little bit more time making them exactly there, but I'll probably correct some of that and clean this up a little bit after the video and get that all dialed in exactly the way that I'd like it. So much like I did with the base, I am going to use this Fix-It Sticks all-in-one torque driver. Again, they have the individual ones that are set more of a torque limiter. And so this gives me the measurement. I can see how that's going to be. Again, I'm not giving you all the torque specifications because your mounts, your optics, all are going to be a little bit different depending on what you have. So read the specifications. Make sure you understand those completely. Also look at what pattern you have that they're recommending you to follow. So in this particular case, maybe I have a cross pattern. Some of them, they want you to do one side versus the other. But make sure you read on that so that you can get this applied the right way. So I would go through and torque these appropriately for the specifications. Make sure that that's all locked in, all while validating that along every step of the way, my adjustment of my level does not change. If I over tighten on one side, that could cause this optic to rotate a little bit. So I want to keep an eye on that through this entire process and make sure that it's not leaning, not changing at all as I go through it. So I like to start off and kind of step them up. I don't go immediately to the final torque settings. And so I like to kind of see where that is and kind of work my way up onto it. And on this one, I have a cross pattern. And we'll go back to this back ring. All right, I got a little bit of movement on that one. Let's see if I tighten this other side down. if that brings that back. All right, so as I mentioned, very important for us to keep these in view as we're going. I have that movement just a little bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and undo these. Make sure that I can reset this. And sometimes this takes a few passes, making sure you don't want this to move much as you're tightening them down. So make that adjustment, take your time. A little patience through this process will pay dividends in the range and in any other activities that you're doing with this. So take your time to do this correct. So I will take some time, I'll go through this back and forth, I'll get this dialed in, make sure that everything is torqued down. Again, my gaps are being maintained pretty close and that I maintain that level through the entire process. Okay, so in all my excitement to get this set up and all leveled out, as I was working through the fine-tuning process, I happened to look over and remembered that I had brought in this MDT Send It digital level indicator light. So this is also useful when making sure that you're maintaining a level rifle through the entire installation process. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this on real fast. I'll do a much more deep dive review of this as we go out and use it in the field, so you can see how this is going to leverage, or how it can be leveraged there as well. But just for the purposes of showing it on the installation process, this has a pretty simple mount right onto your Picatinny rail. Okay, so as you can see, that's simple installed. As I turn this on, it'll go through a self-diagnostic mode. You can adjust the brightness of the LED up and down using the same dial as you used to turn it on. And that single green light in the center indicates that this is perfectly level out, and I can confirm that the rifle and the wheeler bubble level on the barrel is still level. So that combined now with my scope, now that I've finalized that, you can see here that this is perfectly level as well, and we are ready to move on. So there you have it. That's really the process. Again, really the true test for this and the true validation on if everything is lined up, working appropriately, is to get this out to the field and run some actual rounds through this, make sure that all my turrets, both elevation and windage, are tracking appropriately, getting me those readings with some small groupings and so forth. There's other ways that I can also start to validate this. You know, there's flashlight methods where I can see the reticle on the wall. There's methods on, you know, using a plumb line and checking my reticle against that. Those are all great ways to double check. I may do some of those as I progress, but at the end of the day, it really does come down to how it's performing in the field. And so that's really the ultimate test to make sure that we have it ready to go. And if it's not tracking exactly how you want, go through some minimal troubleshooting steps, go back, double check all of the leveling, make sure everything is done correctly there, and validate the best that you can that everything is you know, operating properly and functioning properly within the scope itself. So that's really all I have for today. I hope this was helpful in some way whatsoever. And if you like this type of content, please hit that like and subscribe button down below. Put your comments in there. Would love to hear other feedback that you have, different processes, different methods that you're using to get scopes mounted, validated, etc. And just what you're seeing, if this is the type of content you'd like to see, or if there's something else that you'd like us to start to put out there, please let us know that as well. So hopefully you have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.